Okay. Let me share this. Okay, yeah. So thank you, Team Marito, for taking time out. I know that a lot of at least for Olivia and I, it's a very hectic season for us. But we'll just do a very quick kind of update just to get everybody thinking about some questions that we can look into. It's more on the current holdings we have, but at the same time, I think each team is still going to look at any new names and especially for you guys, like figuring out what kind of details, like what are the minute details behind your strategy, what kind of ideas are you interested in, what's in your circle of competence. But I think for the big meeting, it's still perhaps more from an angle of what we're currently holding and then possibly what kind of broader questions we might be interested in. Yeah. So but a quick update on just the two key markets that we are covering and are kind of more important to us. Um, Actually, for the States, it's been a continuation of everybody just watching what the government will do. In this case, recently, it's this kind of trouble with the debt ceiling. So, the debt ceiling is this cap on, how much uh, outstanding debt the U.S. Treasury can have at any given moment, and if it looks like it's going to exceed it, there's a very serious consequence of the government defaulting on the debt. And then what usually happens in this case is that the president and the Congress kind of wants to like negotiate, kind of wants to have to make a decision together on two options. Either you default, which is something that they want to avoid, but or you choose between suspending it. So suspending means like we temporarily ignore that we've exceeded the cap, and then we try to like fix it before we have to stay in the suspension mode for too long. Or you raise it, so you permanently change the debt ceiling to be even higher so that you don't have to default right now. Yeah, but the threat, the risk of defaulting, of not being able to reach a consensus on what exactly to do about the debt ceiling, it could have pretty big impact on markets, especially like investor confidence wise. And then possibly over the long term, if we do enter into, I think default is like in a few days, like the official timeline. So this is actually quite interesting. It could lead to longer term effects in slowing down the economy. Yeah, but so far, unless they really can't make a decision, which seems unlikely, it's more likely to be just volatility based on what the investors kind of are expecting the near term kind of market conditions to kind of be like. Yeah, I think for China, since our entire portfolio is actually currently invested in China, we've been looking at the first quarter results. So last month, um, uh, I was telling everybody that the first quarter GDP data was gonna come out, I think, in a few days from the last meeting. Yeah, and then basically it's out. It's actually more positive than we expected, so that's good news. Um, so compared to pre-pandemic and like before they lifted a lot of the COVID restrictions, this is by right, I think one of the first quarters where you've seen a more significant change in um, how people are going out and spending money, how kind of the optimism both for investors, for consumers, for businesses. Yeah, so the economy has actually grown by about 4%, which is really good, honestly. It's a lot closer to the party's estimates of about 5.5. Yeah. And then I think we're also watching the new energy automobiles, so EVs, very closely, and especially because China is currently undergoing this removal of the EV subsidies and kind of adjusting on the policy end for their emission standards. There has been a discount in just the retail pricing of a lot of EVs, and this has kind of led to just a slightly lower kind of sales amount than usual, and then you kind of see that this is boosted volume. So a lot of production is up, but also exports are generally have been up for all goods across the board, but especially for cars. Yeah. And then however, like same thing as before, there are some longer term problems that are going to prove to be more difficult for China to iron out. So things like unemployment for like people like me and Olivia around our age, people who are about to graduate from university. That is still something that's quite prevalent. I think it's between 20 to 30% right now. Yeah. And then that's definitely not good for the economy, social stability, anything. But that's definitely something that they're going to try and kind of create more entry level jobs for these very young unemployed graduates to kind of fill up. Yeah, and then consumer spending has gone up a lot because of the um, loosening of the COVID restrictions, but at the same time, because people are sort of unsure about where the economy is going and their own savings, and they're still saving a lot like Chinese people do, and consumer spending does still have a lot of room to go up, I think, compared to um, the height of Chinese consumer spending. Yeah, but it has gone back. So overall, I think it is pretty clear. So it's a definitely a clear sign that um, overall for the first quarter, China is recovering quite as expected. So definitely making quite a big shift on the COVID front, and then also the government trying to introduce more policies that kind of boost investment, uh, try and get people like to get to spend again. I think it's starting to show some effects, and that's overall in line with the general move towards uh, changing emission standards, but also kind of letting EV companies grow, and especially because we're invested in BYD, um, it's definitely important to see as you remove that support who is gonna stay. As the water goes on, you kind of see who has that kind of longer term more resilient advantage, and then who could have been relying too much on the subsidies, or didn't make enough of like a long-term investment to prepare itself for being more competitive in a no subsidy environment. Yeah, but that's just a very quick update on both the United States and China, and then we'll move really quickly to um, the discussion for today, which is um, because I think a lot of groups are kind of still finding their way, either looking at a company and realizing that it's not a good fit or it's not a good price point. That's okay. I think the whole process of stock picking is a lot of like iteration. It's a lot of looking at something and then trying to see if it checks as many boxes as we want it to check. And then sometimes if it doesn't, it either goes into our archive, like maybe we'll keep an eye on it, or it's something that we realize that is fundamentally probably not a good use of our time. That's okay. I think especially for Marito, it's a lot more about I think just getting as many potential ideas as you can out into the open, into getting it heard in front of your other teammates. And then if there's something interesting, like if there's a really interesting question, or if there's um like a potential like really attractive valuation, then maybe that compels us a little bit more, like gives us a few more reasons, checks a few more boxes for us to kind of do more deeper research. But I think for now, I think especially for Olivia, and then I think Jensen couldn't make it today, but for I think you guys, and as well as I think uh at the end of the day, whenever we hold something, so anything that the whole fund is invested in, there's no like strict team in charge of it anymore. So I think, and even though BYD and Alibaba, like there have been like very specific people who have pushed it, But I think when it comes to us building up more research on it, I think it's a useful exercise for everybody, because at the end of the day, like, everybody should be an expert on what we're holding. It's not like we have one Z Club and then only one person is behind this one stock and then everybody else is just completely clueless about it. Yeah. So I think for Olivia, I know that we had a lot of confusion over what was going to happen to Alibaba because
Yeah, really.
yeah. So
Yes, I
I
agree.
think reading the most recent update, it's as as I suspected. So they're going to convert some of the existing shareholders shares into the
Yeah.
original IPO shares. Yeah. So I think what's useful for us right now is, since we probably only care about Alibaba Cloud, because in our previous
Yeah, exactly.
analysis, we were, also looking at what could be eating into its like whether some profits from the retail or the cloud end are being used to cover losses. But now we have to recognize that that sort of linkage has been, cut, it has been eliminated. So now we can kind of just focus the pros, cons, and just looking at the health of one segment like cloud. I think this can be something that we can put into writing. So we could just more clearly present, because I think if it's confusing to us, it's probably also confusing to Shinya,
Yeah,
Tiffany, anybody who's looking at what we're holding. Like, they
yeah,
want to know what's
same
going to
for me.
happen. Yeah. So I think we can kind of put down a simple explanation of what might be different,
Yeah.
like what's the significance of this change. On one end, it's, the very simple idea that instead of having one big company that has, different businesses covering for each other, it's now going to be
Yeah.
independent. And then how that changes, you know if you used to work in Alibaba Cloud, you're very, very proud of your product. But maybe if you used to work for Hema or like their direct to consumer,
Yeah, yeah.
like, you're a little bit more scared now that, if you don't, do something that
Ah.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
I
So
actually,
I think,
yeah.
mhm. No, please go ahead.
You first, you first, you first.
Oh yeah, no, but I think basically just I'm gonna finish this first point, which is I think for us, before we do anything like super like in depth, we could just kind of write a little memo on what exactly is happening to Alibaba Cloud, what is gonna happen to our stock, and then also what we
Yeah.
think is going to fundamentally change about Alibaba Cloud. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that is
Please
true.
go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have some consideration about their
Mhm.
strategy to do the separations of the
Yeah.
different business segments. First of all, I think they might be lose the control for Alibaba Group. This is a holding company of the six
Mhm.
segment group. Like
Yeah.
they, yes, like what I concern is how about their interest controlling it, it will belong to the specific group or they will all belong to the holding company like Alibaba Group. This is the one question I'm trying to figure out. And the
Uh-huh.
second one is like the capital structure changes. For example, well, they increase the capital expenditures and like raise the additional capital to fund ongoing operations. Yeah, this is my second
That's very
thinking.
good.
And
Mhm.
yeah, and the third one is the debt split. Will they undertake the debt together, or it will be split also into different segments? This is my thinking. And for especially for the e-commerce and the cloud, how should they to split the debt issues? And also another thinking is about the tax implications. I think the tax is very important, and it can be
Yeah.
it can be thinking also in this, like the potential capital gains taxes and like the tax treatment of the asset and the ability, liability after they do the separation policies, and also like any applicable apply how to say this word, applicable applicable,
Applicable.
yeah, any applicable tax incentives or exemptions existing during this. And one other thing I learned recently, like the income before taxation is lost than, well, in other, for example, let me give a stupid example, like for the Cainiao group, if they have taxation is lost, well, this possible to be used the offset the tax in the holding company, like for the
Right,
group.
yeah.
What was this possible? Yeah. So does this will happen in the future? Like they on purpose doing the loss about the income tax, the income before the tax, and the purpose is to for the offset the tax for the whole Alibaba group.
That's an interesting theory.
Kind of
Yeah,
confusing.
very
Yeah.
possible, I think.
Yeah. And the last one I'm thinking is the financial impact, like the Alibaba Group's profitable business segment is e-commerce in China market, and the second is cloud. And also I checked the recently quarterly report. They said like in the last years, the physical year's income only the e-commerce in China is profitable, and others are all the loss. And in this year's first quarter, the e-commerce in China and also the cloud got the profitable, others are all lost. So after they did the separation policies, I mean, there will be no enough cash flow to contribute to the other groups. I mean, if they independently as a group. Yeah, so this is my thinking about their split strategy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I just jotted down as you were talking, and then I think you probably have this noted down somewhere as well. But yeah, I think like, do you think that it would be helpful, like what I suggested, like if we just publish a shorter memo just talking about the change and what like we are making sense of it, like what sense we've made of it, something like that?
Oh, you mean I write some memo about this kind of questions
Yeah,
I
yeah,
asked
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I think that would really help us moving forward. And then also just, like I said, letting Shinya and Tiffany know that something important is happening to our holding. Yeah. Okay.
But I'm still confused about these questions. I don't know how to find the answer of them.
Yeah. I
What
think
should I do?
yeah,
I can
I
help
think
with you.
yeah. Okay, yeah. So okay, I don't know how many of you, I think all of you should be on Lark right now, but let me also just kind of okay, I will share the link for joining Lark just in case any of the four of you still don't have Lark yet. But so basically they're trying to shift to Lark because Chinya has got very fed up with Wukong and how
He mentioned.
it keeps kicking people out. So they're like taking out a lot of money to buy Lark. So I think we need to shift a lot of our storage. So like anything you write, anything that like any report that you find online or any news article that you download, stuff like that, you can put it into the drive for Lark. Yeah, and then if you want to write anything, like for example, for this memo explaining the change for Alibaba, like we can do it on a Lark document. That's, you know, the cloud, everybody can edit it at the same time, and then we'll just save it under the Baba folder, something like that. But yeah, you guys can go back and play around with Lark and see, you know, how do we start a document like this? How do we, you know, if Olivia starts it, how do I look for like Raj and how do I add him? Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, but one question, when will we move to the Lark? Like,
I think
I
they're
heard
doing it
from
now.
Shinya.
So
Doing now? Oh,
yeah. So
but I heard from
they
Shinya's. He said like the next month we were gonna move into the Lark platform,
Yeah,
and for the Lark platform they will have
okay.
$7 per month. Is that correct? Because Shinya also said like it's very expensive for the Lark.
It's very expensive. Yeah, I think
platform.
it's USD. Yeah. So
Oh yeah, USD.
yeah. So I think
$7.
yeah, maybe they mean officially next month we're gonna shift to Lark, but actually by now you can actually start streaming in. I mean, Raj has been there for a long time. A lot of us have been in the community channel.
Yeah.
And then we can start trying out, like playing around with the document. Yeah. So yeah, that's just for the first memo. I think we're gonna be a little bit ambitious if we talk about the second and third point, but I was just thinking, like, based on what we have now on each of our holdings, like what seems to be questions that we haven't answered yet. And I think for if we really want the stock to keep going up over time, every month, every year, um, I think we need to look at more of the fundamentals of what's going to happen, like kind of go into the details of that. So I think what's interesting under Ali Cloud is that a lot of their AI initiatives are there,
Yeah,
and AI has
innovation,
you know continued to be the talk of the town for I don't know like the which
yeah.
consecutive month,
All
but
right.
I think it makes sense. I think it's less likely gonna be like a fad than something that um might actually accelerate a lot of the growth, especially if you look at it's not being profitable. So why is it not profitable? What is it spending so much money on? And then how is that turnover of that money that you invested and when it's gonna start making you money? So I think um if there's tech like this that's kind of going to act as a catalyst for either your like pure cloud business or if they're going to extend any of the technology that is in their R&D to other ones, like it could have a slightly faster effect on turning certain businesses around. So I think this was quite interesting. But yeah, this is just something that I like, thought of just like a very random thought. So I just put it here as a possible question that maybe the Alibaba team can look at, or anybody else who's interested on like looking at more Alibaba and writing a bit more. Yeah, so but I think it's a bit ambitious now, especially because I think in the next month or so, it could be something that we could work on a little bit more over the summer, I think. Yeah, and then also I think another reason why Baba stock is still kind of undervalued by the market is because of this big question mark about regulation, about everybody's so afraid that some other like big move from the government is going to squash any kind of, especially because Alibaba is kind of vulnerable right now. It's going through a lot of change. There's a little bit more risk on the organizational structure side. um if it gets hit by something like a monopoly, like an antitrust fine again, or if there's, especially if it's data and if it's things that are kind of more of a sensitive thing for the Chinese government, it could be something that Ali Cloud in general, sorry, it specifically has to be very careful about. And then I think this this is not as clear. So it's not so easy to answer this question and just like write a report about it. I think this is something that we can sort of keep in mind because I think when we look at the price movement of the stock, like if it stays down or if it goes down, I think it's important to kind of really look into what the bears are thinking and why they think that it's going to go down or why they're selling the stock. Yeah, so I think this is one of the very big concerns with Baba. And then if we are able to kind of think a bit more about this question and maybe the government, you can't predict what the government's going to do, but if you can kind of get a sense of they've done this in the past. Now with what they've gone through in the past, with all that they experienced, the failed IPO, the Jack Ma leaving the country, like with what they've learned through that whole process, what do you think they're gonna do differently now? And what are the kind of things that they might be able to work more successfully with the government? Yeah. So I think that's also a very interesting thought exercise. Same as the second point, a little bit ambitious for us now, but it could be something that we could work on throughout like June, July, August. Yeah. So I think that's for Baba. I know I might just talk a little bit about BYD just so that Marito is also caught up to date with what might happen with Spring. Um and again, there's no like strict like only Team Spring members can work on BYD. No, um I think we already have the first memo, and then same as Baba, um we have quite a big holding in it. I think same logic. It's still that based on what we know now, if you really think about it, we have so much time as like long-term investors. Like we don't just like stop after like writing the first memo and then we just like close our eyes and like go to bed every night and not think about the stock, and then hopefully like 3 years later we check it and it's up. Like I think the advantage of us having so much time and having like monthly meetings and having weekly Saturday meetings is so that we can keep thinking of new questions. I think if you really just think I'm gonna write more stuff, and then it takes you a long time to figure out like what to write. But if you look at it and you think what kind of questions are still, unanswered, or what kind of things could be interesting, but I still don't know enough about, or I still don't have a very clear opinion of, then you have like a very clear like agenda. So I think for BYD, what we have so far is um like a lot about its value chain, about how it's able to do vertical integration, how it's able to sell batteries to its biggest competitor, and then also kind of the whole policy environment in China. So I think it's pretty important to kind of drill down deeper. So right now, each one of those points are like 1 or 2 paragraphs in the initial memo. But if we really wanted to test what we think, so we think A, B, C, but is it really A, B, C? We don't know. Like we just saw like some data points, or we just saw like an opinion piece that said maybe it's ABC. Like, can we try to see if it's really ABC, or if it's ABC plus something, or like there's a caveat? Yeah. Or within this ABC, what is perhaps like a lying like threat, or an underlying opportunity? I think there's a lot of smaller details that we can drill into, especially because we've already entered the position. So we have, number one, more of an incentive to look at it because we're already interested. We're so interested that we bought stock, right? And then number two, we're also exposed. So we're also responsible for trying to kind of like, it's like you marry somebody, but you're also trying to figure out like if they're keeping anything from you, or if there's any like weird little like things about them that I want to like figure out like if I made the right choice. Yeah, you can do that because you're not married to the company, right? You're not,
Of
forever
course.
invested in this. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think if there's any concerns we have about the company, like now is the time to kind of like dig and like kind of see what you're hiding in the closet. Yeah. So if there's anything that could pop up, it's when we look more closely at stuff like this. So like within each of its business segments, it makes handphone parts. Like that's so like interesting. Like, and most of us don't really think of it when we buy BYD, but what kind of place does that come from? Why do they do it? And then also like how is that going to affect their overall revenue composition, their expense composition? How, like Olivia said just now, how is it going to affect the company when it comes to accounting, and how much cash flow goes where, and how they make capex decisions? Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Right now, again, in the initial memo, it's still like very little, like, oh, BYD has these business segments, and then full stop. Like we don't really know if we wanted to drill in deep. Like think of it like this is a huge company with like hundreds, thousands of people in every division, and we're just gonna like say that they exist. Like that's obviously not enough if we really want to be high conviction. We want to really know that yes, I had doubts about this company, but I looked at it, I thought it was worth investing in, and then I'm doing my due diligence even after I've gotten into the stock, and I'm gonna keep like trying to see whether ABC is really true, or whether there's something that's hiding, or whether there's something that maybe I didn't even value in the first place but is actually valuable. Yeah. So yeah, but again, I think this one might I might bring it up to spring first, but again, like there's no restriction on you guys. So if you guys want to work with them on this, like feel free to go ahead. Although I think just realistically, if we wanted to do the Baba thing, we might also not have enough time. So maybe a division of labor makes sense. But yeah, if you just like have any thoughts or any questions or any like, I'm listing out a lot of points here because I think we can at least ask questions, or I can at least ask questions to you guys. And then if you think it's a worthwhile question, then you can look into it. But if you think of something else, like that could be more worthwhile, or that could be an even better question, or that could be a more urgent question, and then you could look at that as well. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I was thinking for BYD maybe just drilling into each of its business segments, because we have that whole point about how they're vertically integrated. I want to know what exactly is going on in each of these divisions. Like what kind of things is like shareable between the divisions, what kind of benefits, what kind of challenges, what kind of interactions exist between the divisions. And then also I think competitors, I think EV it's so competitive. It's like especially in China or over the world, like you really want to see how they're marketing this very new, very like kind of uncertain, like there's no very long history of people buying EVs. You're always, even after so many years, you're always trying to get more customers. You're trying to kind of secure the brand or the kind of product image that with among your customers first. So at this point, how do you compete? Is it with price? Is it with like how reliable the car is, about how like convenient it is to get charging, or just kind of different strategies that different competitors have chosen, and then where that's landed them, and then what you think is going to be the kind of company or the kind of product line that's going to be the most, or is going to be the winner in a very, very competitive market. And then also, like I said before, as the government is changing policy, as the government is removing subsidies, or as the government is choosing, to invest in more infrastructure for EV, like across cities, like how is that going to kind of affect the entire space and everybody in the space? Are there people who are going to be able to benefit more from a policy move? Are there people who didn't invest enough or aren't prepared for this shift? Yeah, and I think that can be quite interesting as well. Yeah. I think again, like if you guys wanted to look at these segments or competitors or supply chain or long-term investments, like a lot of it Olivia has already shared about. I think it's kind of like common across different companies. Like I think Alibaba, like if after, so I think the ones I put down number one, so that's the most urgent, but there are different things that you can always do for almost every company. And I think the thing is, we don't, like for now, I think when you guys write things, it doesn't have to be a full pitch. Like it doesn't make sense if it's a full pitch. Does that, that's right? Like we're not pitching anymore because we've bought it. Like we don't need to sell anybody the idea that the valuation is based on this, and then we're looking at this is the risk, this is the opportunity. We're just trying to publish bit by bit, like we asked this question and that has changed our understanding by this much, and then we asked this other question, that's our, so I think at this point in time it doesn't make sense for us to be too much of a perfectionist. So we don't need to be like, oh, it needs to be a 20-page report with like fully like reference numbers, and we're gonna have a new model every time we publish a report. That's not true. I think for now, whenever we have a question and we want to answer it, we just write something. It doesn't matter, it can be 1 page, 2 page, no matter, like as long as it gets our point across and it helps us think as we write, like we can publish it and we can share it with people. Yeah, and then at least we got it out of our heads, and it's something that we thought about as the company is changing and as we receive more news about what's going to happen to the new businesses, stuff like that. So I think yeah, I think that's all I kind of wanted to kind of just throw out there. It's a pity that I think all the spring people are busy today.
Oh, there is one thing I like to share is about the BYD for the analysis. Well, recently I also learned from my teacher, university teacher. She said like there is a relationship has already built in last year's in the 14th June. Yeah, this time, like it's about the mineral security partnership. Yeah, it's basically happened among the America, USA, Canada, Australia, France, and Japan, and German, and British, and also the European Union. Like they're trying to build a kind of relationship for the lithium mineral or other mineral resources. And this is a kind of will have a influence on the especially on the Chinese EV
Mhm.
chain or
Chinese
or
EV
the
maker.
least or the middle
Mhm.
source chain, because
Mhm.
consider the China and the US relationship,
Yeah.
there is a very big possibility like China will be isolated from this relationship, right? So it will
Yeah.
have a it will have a very big influence on in the futures, like the lithium kind of thing. Yeah, is my thinking.
This is very interesting. I was actually also thinking about how politics keeps like ruining or not
Yeah.
ruining, affecting our businesses. So like tariffs and like a US China standoff that never seems to go anywhere. And then
Yeah.
like also yeah, I think politics does play quite an important role, unfortunately. So it's an extra factor that we have to consider. But
Mm.
yeah, I think especially for EV and whether like these partnerships, I think you're probably thinking along the same lines. Like it's gonna affect your whether you're able to source the raw materials and also like your costs and how that's gonna change how competitive your product is and how cutting edge your technology is. It's gonna affect almost fundamentally how you do your entire manufacturing business. So yeah, this is so interesting. I think I'll definitely you could definitely work with them on this. I could just tell them this first if only they were here. But but yeah, this is really interesting. Yeah, so I think another thing is kind of the political side of everything and how that
Yeah.
could affect your supply chain. Yeah, thank you so much for adding that, even though it's technically hasn't been
Welcome.
something that you pitched. Yeah. Okay, let me just send it in the group. Yeah, but actually we have a really short session today also because we don't really have the other team here to bounce ideas off of. But I think that's it. Do you guys have any questions or
Yes.
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So Rebecca, like since you both are talking about BYD and Alibaba for so long, I mean,
Mhm.
especially with Alibaba, I do have concerns. Like, basically there are a lot of risks over in Alibaba. Okay, I can pretty much understand
Yeah.
it. So I have not read the business, but since you both are discussing about regulation issue, technological things, and so many things, right?
Mhm.
So why we should really pay attention to Alibaba? Like because we could just pass and move on to several businesses in China, right? So why are we spending so much time on focusing on Alibaba? I can agree with
Mhm.
BYD because it has some next revolution thing on the electric vehicle.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Alibaba, do we really need to pay attention towards it? Because we have other several opportunities that are existing in the
Yeah.
Chinese market, right?
Yeah. Okay. I think if Olivia wants to add anything, she can do it, but I'll just answer very quickly why we think that it's still sort of a no-brainer to look at Alibaba. Because number one, um, Alibaba has been doing well. So if you really look at the point of its downfall, so I guess in like 2020,
Mm-hmm,
when the regulation hit and when COVID
mm-hmm,
hit, like
mm-hmm,
the biggest problem back then was that this company was growing too big and that they were becoming a monopoly and that the government was worried about them. But you have to
mm-hmm.
understand what happened to get them there and then what sort of company they are now. So what happened to get them there was that they were hugely successful in
Yeah.
e-commerce and that they kind of built themselves up to be Amazon. They're like representative of an entire age of China's economy. So China's
Mm-hmm,
economy, a lot of it was built from these platform businesses, these like internet
mm-hmm.
companies. So um what happened to them, their regulatory crackdown, I think from one point it's very scary to a lot of foreign investors because they're like, how can we invest in a market where the government
Mm-hmm.
can just do crazy things like this and just like bring entire businesses down and like how do we have this security that the government won't do it again? And I think what's important to understand is why the government did it. So
Mm-hmm.
they did it back then because they wanted a more sustainable, controllable kind of tech giant. So what happens in the States is that you have Google and you have and like
Yeah.
big giant like tech behemoths, and then they sort of go like unchecked until they get slapped with the antitrust. But I think in China, like there is always this idea that the government places social stability, and it places this idea of not having corporation be a more powerful force than um than government.
Okay.
So when it tries to do stuff like change financial institutions and change micro lending, the government, at least for China, like you have to understand what kind of government is trying to be and what kind of things it values. But when you move forward to think about whether that regulation is going to keep hitting or it's going to happen again and destroy everything again, you have to think about why the government would do that and whether it's possibly a loss to the government to do that right now, or if it makes sense for a government to do something like that again, given what they have apparently against. This is something that we're assuming, but you know, it is very, very possible. And I do think it's personally very likely that, you know, after this, Alibaba is going to be like, fingers crossed, like hope they never touch us again. And we're just going to keep doing whatever we did last time. And even though we know what kind of like mind points like set off the Chinese government, I don't think people at Alibaba are that kind of brave or that sort of you know like I don't believe that they haven't thought, because it's you know hurt them, like you know like bit me once, right? But like I think moving on, the Chinese government, especially at this point, it does realize that there has been a shift in who Alibaba is. So Alibaba isn't the same company that's trying to get like stores to only sell on that platform and then that's it. They're shifting, they're investing in so many other different businesses. They're investing in cloud, which is something that the Chinese government has a lot of incentive to not squash. So yes, it is possible that if Alibaba Cloud becomes a monopoly, that they're gonna come in and like hammer you down again. But at the same time, has it reached that yet? Or what kind of approach are Alibaba and the government going to take this time, knowing that they could do something like that? Yeah, and I think a lot of investors still don't really think too much about the motivations of each party, and they don't think too much about what kind of new stage, you know, China coming out from the pandemic, China reaching this new level where the internet companies aren't going to drive all your growth anymore. They're old and they're getting big and they're getting like they've already picked the lowest hanging fruit, which was selling cheap things to a lot of like middle class people. But now if they want to invest, they want to be Google, they want to be Alphabet, they're shifting. So they're not going to do stuff like, I'm just going to sell cheap things, I'm just going to kind of be a monopolist. They're shifting, they're changing into different companies. So I think when it comes to looking at regulation, and then there is a lot of misunderstanding. So that's one point. I think another thing is that, like I said, it's changing. So there are a lot of new potentially profitable, and we're not going to go ahead assuming that it's going to be like 100% successful business. It's going to like revenue's going to grow forever. It's like a done deal. No, we don't know, but the chances are that Alibaba Cloud is the leader in the industry right now. We know that the Chinese government is going to push this really hard because China also wants to be a global leader in cloud business, and it's going to be very profitable. It's going to help China kind of move along the value chain to change from being, you know, the old like world factory, like low end, like only making tiny profits, to being the ones who are on the technological front, being the ones that are able to make, you know, cloud services just as well as AWS or So that's different. And I think one last thing is that, you know, the price right now. So we definitely don't want to start out with a company because you're cheap or your PE is low. So that's not a good way to like, that's why we don't do this thing where we go and screen for PE stocks and whatever it is, we're going to look at it because you're cheap. It's not like that. But at the same time, if the risk to kind of price, so like what price you pay for it is really important. If we're not paying that much to potentially gain a lot, that becomes something that becomes like worth our time. So at right now, it's less than 20 PE. And then for a company that makes 25 billion in cash flow, and you know, it has established itself, it has so many long-term investments, it has established a leading position still in retail and also expanding into many others. It has a very, very kind of big treasure chest moving forward. And it's it's not its government, its leadership, its management has also been evolving. The company itself is evolving. There's a lot of potential catalysts, and
Mm.
so I think it's a lot of factors in the end of the day. But just at the amount of risk we're taking on at this price point for about 80 to 100 per share, it seems really reasonable for a company like this. Yeah.
Okay. Great,
Mhm.
great points, Rebecca. Thank you so much for the elaborate
No problem.
information.
Yeah. And it's important that if you have any questions about World Holding, because we want everybody to, if you have questions, it could be a really good question. It could be something that we didn't really think of before. And then like it may be that we didn't do as thorough enough of our explanation, or maybe there are some points that you mentioned that we also need to test some of our assumptions. Like when I was talking to you just now, there were a lot of things
Mhm.
that I wasn't 100% sure about. And then that is something
Okay,
that we definitely have to keep looking at. Yeah, so it's so important. Like, please keep doing what you're doing by asking questions. And
sure.
yeah, so but the long-term thing, like I said, I think I said this a lot today, but I always think about this because if we meet every month, if we meet every week, like what is it that we're doing? Like we're reading like news about what's happening to our holding companies. Like
Mm.
how do we sort of make sure that our understanding of the company keeps growing versus just kind of blindly believing that whatever we think is right and that whatever we think is enough. Yeah, and how do we kind of make use of this like every month, like these like long periods of time that we have as we're holding a stock. Yeah, so I think that's a very important thing, either in the club or even in your own portfolios or in your own future careers. When you are a long-term investor, what exactly is it that you do when you're waiting for the market to correct, or when you're waiting for certain like stories to play out? And I think we never know whether we're right or whether we've turned over everything, so I think that's really important. Yeah,
Got it.
but
So,
yeah, sorry.
so Rebecca, I have one suggestion for you here. Lastly, the reason is like you asked very beautifully I mentioned, right? So how we can track our business, right? So
Mhm,
like every month what is happening. So Rebecca, what I do while tracking Indian business, very simple.
mhm,
So there is a company called Asian Paints. Okay, so Asian Paints is selling paints, all across India. Okay,
okay.
so their competitive edge is their distribution. Okay, distribution. Like,
Mhm,
let's say I'm just assuming that let's say they have 3,500 distributors across India. Okay,
mhm,
so what I do is every uh, every day I have a algorithm fixed in Google. Like anything related to Asian Paints distribution, it'll automatically comes onto my email.
oh,
Okay, so I'll ensure reading every day. Okay, whether the competitive edge is destroying or whether it is narrowing or widening. Got my
mhm,
point, right? So it's very important. Like let's say you fix the Alibaba's competitive edge is something. Let's say it's related to can say regulatory risk. So what you can consider doing is that ensure maybe you can seek out the help of technology tech friends. I know just ensure
mhm,
that you read all the news related to tech every day, right? And you can over the period of time you can develop a conviction over your competitive edge towards Alibaba, whether you can reduce the position of Alibaba or whether you can increase the
mhm,
position of Alibaba, right? So since you
mhm,
mentioned that Alibaba has good potential, right? So if I were buying Alibaba, what would I do is definitely I'll ensure that I'll buy a small portion of my portfolio in Alibaba, because the number one reason is they have a huge cash flow, right? With that, they can do a lot of experiments. Like
mhm,
just look at Amazon and Google. Okay, how they become successful is because basically they had a cash flow and they doing a lot of experiments with them. So for Alibaba is also doing the similar thing. Okay, so for that single reason, I would, and also it is available at cheap valuation. For these couple of reasons, I would buy Alibaba. Okay, but I would buy let's say
mhm,
3% of the portfolio. Okay. And then what I'll do
mhm,
is I'll wait quarter and quarter ways to see whether is there any changes going on. And then I'll
mhm.
ensure, adding up the position. So it's not something like, we just add up 10%, 20% of portfolio and
Yeah,
just, keep it.
mhm,
So
yeah,
basically, it's about conviction building, right? So how we build conviction is that, we have something in mind for Alibaba. So what we do is we first buy it, okay, 1 or 2%, and based upon the conviction, we can increase over a period of time. So that's how a lot of investors would do. Even some investors would buy at, let's say, their 20x or 10x from their price because they could see the
Mhm.
future. So it's not something like we should buy Alibaba at a single stage, but what we can do is we can buy an initial position, and based
Yeah.
upon the conviction, we can build up on it.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with that. I think especially because we have a lot of room to potentially add to our positions, so that
Yeah,
even that
exactly.
makes it even more worthwhile to keep doing research. Yeah, totally agree.
Yes, so it's Rebecca. Yeah,
Mm, thank you. Okay.
welcome.
Yeah, I think that should be all I have for you guys. And then if there's anything that you are curious about, or if you want to talk to the other team as well, or also within your team's weekly meetings, do keep discussing about like the general idea of what like we talked about today. And then also
Mhm.
don't be afraid to just get started on something, and then even if you have like just three or four paragraphs, you can like share it with your teammates, you can share it with me, you can share it with anybody in the team in the club.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then we can take a look at it. But yeah, I'll leave it up to you guys to figure out how exactly you want to get started, and how you guys want to like plan different time points to kind of check in and see how much you guys managed to research, how much you guys managed to kind of think through and put onto like a Word document, something like that. But I'll leave that up to you guys in your weekly meeting. But for today, I've had you guys for almost an hour. I think we can end it here. Thank you guys so much for coming. I had such a good time talking to you guys about investments. I think like a lot of times I'll just share something I think, but it doesn't mean that it's right or that I'm super sure or that there isn't something else that could be more important. So I really appreciate it when you guys come in and share a lot of like new questions that you thought about, or like kind of like new interesting pieces of information, or like even give me like suggestions on like how to kind of do portfolio management and how to kind of build your position. But yeah, thank you guys for coming. We'll see you around the club. So don't forget to kind of go on. Let me just put the link here again. So I know Raj is already on Lark, but you guys can just click this link here, and I think you should be able to register your email address or any other account, and then you'll be sort of like invited to the organization. And then yeah, hopefully you guys can start writing your shared documents or like kind of putting things into folders on Lark. Yeah, I think that would make Shinya very happy.
yeah, sure, sure,
Yeah.
Rebecca. We will do that.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys face to face. No, I'll see you like on video a month from now. But don't hesitate to like come kind of just message me on Lark. And then I'll definitely check in with you guys on Lark as well. Yeah, I think I'll set up a team group as well. So on Lark, I'm not sure if you have that yet. But yeah, so I'm just gonna set up and I'm gonna put myself in there.
Sure.
Just so that
Thank
yeah.
you so much, Rebecca.
All right, thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Take care, guys.
You to take care. Bye.